So Joe Blackburn, the director for Destiny 2 over at Bungie, put out a video, I guess addressing kind of the state of the game and talking about some few things inside of PvP and some things that they're looking to change, I suppose. And the responses to it that I've seen have actually been really positive. So I thought, hey, let's take a look at this and just see what we think. Also, I do apologize if my voice sounds weird. I've been sick the last couple of days, so it might sound a little off. But anyway, let's get into this.
Hey everybody, it's Joe, and I'm just here to check
That is also
in on how Destiny's going. So a few weeks ago, we put about a state of the game communication that wasn't up to our standards for what y'all have come to expect for those kinds of communications.
It's good to hear him say that because, like, yeah, that state of the game. I actually had like a 45, I don't want to say it was a nearly 45-minute video ready to go. But with some of the other info that's come out, I've just kind of decided to hold off on that. But anyway, let's continue on here.
It didn't provide the high-level vision that we normally provide, and really and truly, a bunch of us were heads down working the final shape and weren't able to give it the sort of care and love that we normally put into these kind of communications. And that's nobody's fault but mine here on this. So I wanted to come in, talk to y'all directly, and sort of give you an update on what we thought about the state of the game that we put out and what we think about Destiny as a whole. Now, this is going to be pretty different than normal. This isn't a highly produced sort of production. It's me in my office. It's not scripted. I've got a bunch of notes here that we're going to read through. And it's going to feel probably more like you're just in a meeting with me, which is going to be rambly, and we're probably going to mess up a few times. But really, I just want to go over where we're thinking about the game. So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about the reveal coming out next week. We're going to talk about PvP. We're going to talk about armor.
PvP, okay.
We're going to talk about our communication strategy. Those are the big ones. So let's just get right into it. Let's start with reveal. Next week, we're going to go out and we're going to show an awesome showcase for the final shape. We're really excited about a bunch of the content in there, but truly, that showcase is not a reaction to the state of the game last week. It's not a reaction to a bunch of the sentiment online, and it's definitely not a reaction to this video. It was recorded a while ago. I think I have a mustache.
So basically, I think what he means by that is we're probably not going to see them talk a lot about the game in its current state in that showcase. So don't expect them to be talking about like Antaeus wards and that sort of thing. They're probably just going to be focusing purely on Lightfall and I don't know, maybe the season accompanying it, that sort of thing.
In the video, and it's a pretty focused reveal. In the same way that the game itself is pretty focused. The final shape is focused on the light. It's focused on the enemies we've been setting up and the allies that you've come to know. It's not about a bunch of wacky new systems or wacky new themes coming into Destiny. Instead, we want to make an experience that's super easy for anyone who's ever played Destiny to come in and absolutely fall in love with the content that's before them.
So that, I think, is a key point because one of the issues with Lightfall, and I do still have some concerns with this, especially with the narrative, given how much of our old content and, like what, 4 of our campaigns and everything were sunset. I do still have some concerns about new players jumping into the game because I feel like most of them probably, they're not going to have a clue what is actually going on because they're missing so much content from those campaigns, seasonal stories, so on and so forth. So hopefully they'll have something that can remedy that, as well as, again, and this has been talked about before, but something has to be done about the cost of getting into this game because the free-to-play experience just is not good. There is nothing really of much substance there. And, I've had friends who, either, they hear me talk about Destiny or, and they are interested in getting into it, or people who, maybe played in year 1 but haven't played much since, and they're interested in getting back into it. And it's a huge problem because they ask me about it, and they ask me, what do I need to get into this? And I find myself having to write like a 500-page college essay about, which DLCs they're going to need and what they should prioritize depending on what they want and so on and so forth. That still needs to be addressed in some form. But anyway, I don't want to pause this too much, so let's continue on.
I think the other thing that's really important here to know, as I sort of look at my meeting notes, is that communication is built for a pretty wide audience, much wider than probably whoever is watching this video. So what we're not going to talk about is things like a big new Strange Coin refactor and Xur revamp that's coming out in the final shape. We're not going to talk about things like a refactor.
So a Xur rework and strange coins. That's interesting. Okay. I am curious, assuming that, that's the thing and he's not just using it, like as an example. I'm actually really curious to see what that is, but moving on.
Of HUD elements where we're making sure the buffs and the debuffs are more clear and you can tell what's happening in higher level combat. It's going to, again, really be focused on the story, really be focused on the location, and maybe we'll get into a little bit about how the live service of Destiny is going to change after the final shape.
Interesting.
Following that showcase, Dan, our GM, and I are going to be on set, taking questions, dotting T's, crossing I's, or maybe the reverse of that, on what you've seen in the showcase. So we'll provide a little bit more clarity on what was shown, and we'll probably get into some ways that maybe our philosophy on the final shape or specific details might have changed over the last few weeks since we recorded the showcase. All right, I think that's it for reveal. If I'm looking at the sheet next, we've got PvP.
Here we go.
So let's start with the state of PvP right now in Destiny.
It's not good.
What have we been doing? What have we been focused on? We've been really focused on sandbox balance. So like a big focus of effort last year was just making sure that Strand came out in a good place.
So okay, I'll give them credit there. When Strand came out, it wasn't like Stasis, right, where it was just completely broken for months. Strand came out and it was, I would say, pretty balanced, which, minus there are a few things that I think need to be toned down, like the Hunter Strand dive that suspends people, that probably needs some tuning. But other than that, I would say Strand as a whole, there are things about it that can be annoying, but I wouldn't for the most part really call it broken, which is ironically enough, probably why you don't see it all that often because it is very much vastly outpowered by, pretty much all of the light subclasses, as well as, stasis on certain classes, I would say is also better than Strand. But, to their credit, they've done a really good job of keeping Strand from being, insanely oppressive. As far as focusing on sandbox balancing goes, I don't know about that. I just want to re-listen to that real quick.
PvP. What have we been doing? What have we been focused on? We've been really focused on sandbox balance. So like a big focus.
Yeah, that I don't know about that. Like, I'm sure a lot of the problems, like Antaeus wards, is on their radar. Clearly Luminarch was because it's getting nerfed next season. But the biggest issue that Bungie has as far as balancing goes is when we have these huge problems, right? Like the Immortal, which is still a problem. The nerf to target lock did not do anything to the Immortal. The Immortal needs to be nuked. But also Antaeus wards, Arc Titan, Void Titan, so on and so forth. When we have these problems, they are just way too slow in addressing them. And even when those issues get addressed, there are going to be others. Like, I don't really expect the range changes to affect how pulse rifles are. I think pulse rifles will still be dominant in that mid-range space. For that matter too, Luminarch is getting nerfed, but I can guarantee you that Wish Ender is going to become the next Luminarch because it literally just gives you wall hacks for free. And for that matter, something needs to be done about bows because they're not super common yet, but they're getting more common, and bows are going to become a problem. I honestly think bows have been bad for PvP. One bow player in a lobby, one bow player can slow down the pace of a match, or at least how your team has to play, to a crawl because they can hit you for massive damage at any range. Plus, bows have a very large hitbox. They're very forgiving. Bows need to be tuned. They are going to become an issue. The other thing, too, that I would say is waveframe grenade launchers. We've already seen that. We've seen some of the builds with Rat King and waveframes. Waveframes are going to become a problem. And, I could go on about that sort of thing, things that will eventually become a problem for a while, but that's not really the focus of this video. Point being that as problems arise, Bungie needs to be faster in addressing them. That's one of the biggest issues that we've seen inside of PvP, whether it's the weapons, the fact that abilities are way too potent and have too much uptime. They are way too slow in addressing some of these issues, but let's continue on.
Focus of effort last year was just making sure that Strand came out in a good place and got to live sort of in harmony with the rest of our Crucible ecosystem. Aside from that, we've been focusing on putting up 2 weapon balances per season, one at the start, one in the mid-season. And we've been focusing on ritual updates to PvP, be this mode updates, point updates, reward updates at the beginning of each season.
That I think has been kind of a mixed bag. I appreciate getting new rewards for PvP at each season, whether it's, getting a new Crucible weapon each season or, 1 to 2 new Trials weapons each season. I appreciate that. Modes has been a bit more mixed, I would say, because we've had some modes that I would say have been really good, like seeing Supremacy come back has been a lot of fun. I'm actually really enjoying Countdown Rush. I really like that mode a lot. But then others, like Eruption, which granted, I would say the biggest issue with Eruption is SBMM, but also Fortress, so on and so forth. Those, of course, have not gone over quite as well. So they've done a pretty good job of bringing stuff like that into the game. It's just when you have as many issues that exist in Crucible as there are, I honestly think the focus needs to be less on new content and more on just fixing PvP so that it doesn't feel, as miserable to play. But anyway.
Finally, we flip over to our agenda. We've been focused on making 1 new map and a few reprises a year. Now, all that aside, I think it's fair to say this approach is not producing the Crucible that our players expect us. So what are we going to do? How are we going to change? First, let's talk about maps. It's clear that the sort of slow trickle of PvP maps isn't having the effect we want. And although it gets an injection of PvP maps every so often into the ecosystem, it's also forcing this like 1 new map a year means we're trying to build a map that has to do everything, which means it can't be good at anything.
That is a very good point. That's one of the biggest issues with Disjunction. It tries to be too much, right? And they talked about this before Witch Queen came out when they talked a little bit about Disjunction. They said, there's going to be something for everyone. There's going to be an area for long range, an area for mid range, an area for close range, so on and so forth. And it just didn't work out. The result is that Disjunction feels terrible to play. All of the, angles and whatever feel just odd. They don't feel right, if that makes sense. It's just not a map that feels good to play. And this does make me a little concerned for the map that we're getting next season. After how Disjunction went, I'm not as excited for a new map, that new one coming next season as other people are, just because of how Disjunction went. But I'm glad that they acknowledge this. And while I don't know how that new map is going to be, hopefully, at least in the future, they will remember that and they'll have maps that are, built with, they're built with a sense of purpose as opposed to feeling, very cobbled together like Disjunction does. But let's continue.
So next year, we're going to change our philosophy. Instead of a slow trickle of maps throughout the year, we're going to focus our effort into a single map pack that's free for everyone.
Interesting.
So imagine new maps coming in 1 drop where we can make a bunch of new experiences that can all be good at specific things and adds a big variety in a single drop next year.
Okay, I like that. Map packs, especially, assuming it's not just next year and they continue to be free, that's awesome. The one thing that I will say is it's got to be a good number of maps. Like, I don't know what number of maps you guys think when you hear the word map pack, but given, experience from games, in the past, like Call of Duty, Battlefield, Halo, so on and so forth, I tend to think at least 3 to 4 maps. So I would say it needs to be at least 3 maps in a pack. And I would say on top of that, they need to be all new maps. And if they want to reprise a map, right, they're planning on bringing an old map back, whether it's one from Destiny 1 or it's a map that was sunset, those need to be separate. But that being said, I like this. I like, the idea of having 4 new maps in a pack, even if that's just once per year. That is a massive improvement over where we are currently. So I applaud them for that. That sounds really good. Hopefully these maps deliver, but let's continue on.
Now, this is a shift from our strategy, so it's going to take us time to sort of understand the details of what we're putting out here and getting that out to you all next year. Okay, maps are great, but we still really believe that PvP is about the foundation, and new maps aren't going to solve a foundation.
Right.
So modes.
I've been saying that for a while. Like, as nice as like new maps and new modes and all of that are, it doesn't matter if the core gameplay doesn't feel good. And the core gameplay of Crucible hasn't felt very good now for like a year and a half.
First of all, I'm really excited about what's coming out in season 22. First, with Checkmate. Checkmate is a mode all about that sort of primary fire, basic weapon excellence of Bungie games and being able to show that excellence in a PvP setting. It's what a bunch of our like really marksman style PvP players have been asking for a long time since Destiny 1. And we're finally going to put a mode like that in the game. And I'm super excited for a bunch of those players to get that experience starting right away in season 22.
Okay, quick note on Checkmate because we all know what this is by now. Bungie basically described it as, and I'm actually excited for this mode for the most part. They've been basically said, you know, this is a mode where your abilities have a much slower cooldown, which is fantastic. Weapons as a whole have a slightly slower time to kill, with the only exception, I believe, being hand cannons. Special ammo does not drop on death. It has to be earned via gameplay, which I'm curious to see how that goes. My guess is that it will mean you have to get special ammo from a crate, similarly to how you did in Destiny 2, in Destiny 1. In Destiny 1, if you wanted special ammo, you had to pick it up from a crate in a similar manner to how heavy ammo is currently. Now, I am not necessarily a fan of that system. My solution has been for a while, and this would still be something I would at least like to see how it played out. But basically is that special ammo, I think, should only drop from kills that came entirely from your primary weapon. And when I say entirely, I mean like, you know, if you made someone weak with, you know, your special weapon or an ability or something, and then you clean them up with with your primary weapon, then special ammo doesn't drop because, you know, the other thing you use, whether that's a special weapon, heavy weapon, ability, whatever, that did the heavy lifting. I think special ammo should only drop from kills you got entirely with your primary weapon. I think that would make it so that special weapons still stay viable inside of PvP, but I think that would help address, you know, some of the issues we've had with special weapons. It would also, I think, help prevent some of the, you know, more oppressive special weapon metas that we've had, such as, you know, the Lorentz driver meta that we had last year, which was terrible. That basically made Crucible, at least, you know, especially the 3v3 modes, borderline unplayable for quite a while. Another example would be currently Antaeus wards. You know, the way people are using Antaeus wards is they're sliding at you with, you know, a fusion rifle, a shotgun, whatever, and that's just how they're getting their kills. So if, you know, if special ammo only dropped from kills from a primary weapon, I think that would help a lot. But that was just my idea. But we're gonna move on here because I could spend a lot of time talking about that.
Next, we've got Relic. And so Relic is a different kind of mode, and it sort of is a building off of these experiments that we've been doing with things like Fortress or Eruption, where it's about this quality Destiny sandbox experience of your guns and your powers that escalates when you succeed in sort of a crazy mayhem-like experience. And we think the balance of those two things is a really great time to sort of spin away from other parts of the game and get the full spectrum of what Destiny has to offer.
So they talked about Relic in the state of the game, and again, you know, like this sounds fine. You know, party modes are fine, but again, I'm less interested in new modes and new maps and more interested in what's actually being done to PvP at its core. Also, as a quick note, something I forgot to mention on Checkmate, I want everyone to keep in mind that Checkmate is almost certainly a guinea pig mode where they're going to see how the community reacts to it and possibly use it to make, you know, changes to Crucible as a whole. Kind of like, you know, it's the same vibe that I got from zone control trials when it was first introduced. At first, it was something that would just come up every once in a while. And then, you know, we kind of found out later it seemed to be more of a test because now it's a permanent mode. It is what Trials of Osiris is. There is only zone control Trials of Osiris now. So keep that in mind when Checkmate releases. They may be using Checkmate. In fact, I would say they are almost certainly using Checkmate to gauge, you know, overarching changes to PvP as a whole, whether that's TTK, how special ammo is acquired, ability recharge time, so on and so forth. So keep that in mind when we go into Checkmate.
I'm really excited about things like Fortress, and I'm really excited that Relic is going to provide an experience like this that is both, you know, fun for people that are really good at slaying out and also has these sort of like high octane hijinks moments to it. But that's what we've already committed to. So let's talk about some new things that we think we need to do. One, we know we need to bring more of our modes into the core playlists. We've been putting a lot out in labs. We've been putting a lot out in Iron Banner. And to be honest, there's a few obstacles to us putting these into our core playlists, be this VO or small bug level issues that we just were like, I don't know if we're ready. I think that has been blocking us from doing the right thing here. So we're going to take on some of that bug wake. We're going to take on a little bit of the jank, and we're going to say, no. This isn't worth us not putting into the mode. And so we're going to take some of these modes that we've been putting in Crucible Labs, that we've been putting in Iron Banner, and taking them and putting them into the core PvP experience that most of our players experience.
Okay. So this is something that I'm curious to see how they do this. Will it be in a rotator? Will it, will control rotate out, every now and then for something else? Will they add new nodes with, new modes, or will they add an entirely new rotator? I don't know, but I'm curious about this and a little concerned. Some of the new modes that we've gotten have been great. Like I said, I really enjoy Countdown Rush, but others not so much. Like, I'm sorry, I just don't like Fortress very much at all. I don't like Eruption anymore. Again, that's mainly because of SPMM. But, assuming SPMM stays around, which I think at least in 6v6 it should not, then I don't know about this. We'll just have to see kind of how this plays out, how they do it. I am of the opinion that Control, and for that matter, Clash, should be modes that we always have access to. I don't want to see this be another thing where, Control rotates out, for another mode each week or something like that. So I am curious about this. I'm interested to see how it goes, but I also have some concerns, but we won't know until we actually see it in practice.
We've also heard a lot about comp, and particularly about the way that we reward points in comp. So we want to take a new approach to the way that we're balancing points in comp. Right now, we think it's just weighted too much on your personal MMR versus the people you're playing against. And when you win or when you lose a game, it can be really unpredictable how many points you're getting. We're going to go to a simpler system where winning or losing just matters more.
Okay. So he is right. Like the matches in comp, and this is one of the big reasons I don't really play it outside of trying to get whatever the comp weapon is each week. The big issue with comp is that, yes, the matches are just insanely inconsistent and it always seems to go to one extreme or the other. Either you're the one doing the stomping or you're the one getting stomped, and there isn't really much of an in-between. So granted, I think the main issue with that is just lobby balancing, which lobby balancing in general in this game is terrible, but it especially comes through inside of comp. So if they can do something about that, then I think comp will be in a better place. And then on top of that, if they can fix some of these issues with, broken abilities and weapons and whatnot, if they can fix that too, then comp will honestly be, I think, in a great place. It would be a very good playlist. But, again, this seems a little bit vague, so we'll just have to see what comes out about this, what they mean by a simpler system and whatnot. But I'm curious about this because I want to like comp. I want it to be something I'm excited to play every week. Instead, ever since comp got that rework back in Season of the Seraph, I kind of dread playing it each week, and I play my matches to get the weapons, on each of my characters, and then I'm out. I don't touch it again. So I want to like comp. I'm hoping this will make me like comp.
Finally, we want to get great modes like Countdown Rush into competitive and get modes that people are less excited about, like Rift, out of the rotation.
Okay. So I'm okay with that. Like I don't hate Rift as much as I did when it first came out. In fact, when it's the mode in the CBMM rotator, I actually play it quite a bit. I'm just not as big a fan of it inside of comp because, one team wipe and either you win or you lose. So I'm just not a big fan of that. Countdown Rush, I think, could be a good pick for comp, assuming, certain things are addressed there, which I may do a full video on Countdown Rush because I think it's a very interesting mode. I think inside of comp, for one thing, I would rather just have one objective as opposed to two. But I am curious to see how this goes because I do think it could be a good fit for comp if they do it right.
making that competitive experience more about the game modes that, you know, our players enjoy. Okay, so we've talked map strategy, we've talked modes. I want to talk one other effort we want to do here. We're going to bolster what we call a PvP strike team.
Okay.
Throughout Destiny development, we've built strike teams for efforts before. This has probably been sort of invisible to you all in the audience, but in moments like in between Curse of Osiris and Warmind, we built a strike team for Destiny investment.
Interesting.
This team was sort of built around, hey, how can we make it more rewarding and more enjoyable to just get stuff in Destiny 2? This team built stuff very quickly, like what would eventually become the masterworking system. They also went through, knocked out.
Okay, so what this sounds like is PvP might finally be getting its own team. Hopefully when they say strike team, you know, this isn't a temporary thing. Hopefully this strike team just becomes the dedicated PvP team, because I would say the biggest thing that PvP needs is a dedicated team. Something that we heard in the state of the game is that, you know, whenever they change something inside of PvP, they have to pull from other teams, take resources away from other teams, and that just can't be a thing. PvP needs its own dedicated team where the only thing that they mess with is PvP. So this, out of everything else that he's talked about, this has me the most excited. If PvP had a dedicated team and a team that can, you know, work with people who, you know, handle the abilities, the weapons in the game, so on and so forth, that would address so many issues. That might fix the problem that we have where problems inside of PvP take so long to address. If PvP has its own dedicated team, that would fix so many problems. So that actually makes me really happy. That has me more excited than anything else that they've talked about so far inside of this video.
Got a whole bunch of bugs, knocked out a whole bunch of quality life issues. We're going to take the same effort and we're going to build a PvP strike team around the same principle, but have it focused on the Crucible.
Awesome.
It's going to be led by PvP developers, and it has a really interesting playbook for how this works. And that's that first the team decides what they want to do. They as a team get together, say, hey, these are the changes we want to make. Those changes go through me. They go through our systems CD. And then when we say, yep, those are great changes, they immediately get communicated with you all in the community, right? So this will be going out into Twid, going.
You nearly said TWAB. That's funny. I still call it a TWAB. I'm sorry. Twid just does not sound right.
Going out in a Twitter post or going out on Reddit, right? Just sort of some immediate blast, like, hey, these are the changes coming. And those changes get communicated even before they start getting implemented. And then we start getting implemented.
That's awesome. I love hearing that.
We found this formula is a really successful way for us to be able to push through changes quickly into the community. And I think one of the most exciting parts about these strike teams is we build them based off of community feedback. So these strike teams are built from the ground up to look at, hey, what are the pain points that are hitting our community the most? And so all this list is going to be built and burned down from, hey, these are the big issues the PvP community is looking at in Destiny.
Thank God. Like, this could fix, guys, this could fix so many issues inside of PvP. If they do this right, then PvP could be in the best spot it has ever been in, assuming they execute this correctly. This is a fantastic change. So, hey, that's awesome. And guys, this is everyone's chance. You know, everyone out there who plays PvP, this is your chance to provide Bungie with good feedback. So keep that in mind. Keep an eye on PvP as you're playing it, as we move into these new seasons, as we move into Final Shape and beyond. Make sure you make your voices heard, because this new team is probably primarily who's going to be listening to that. So make sure that you are providing feedback, you know, and again, keep it respectful. Don't be a dick, right? Don't be out here fucking with developers and whatnot, but be prepared to provide feedback, because if these guys do this how I think they will and how we all want them to, where they are actively listening and actively trying to make changes to improve PvP, then PvP could be in the best spot it has ever been in, period. So keep that in mind, but let's move on.
All right, I think that's the end of the PvP part of our agenda. If I'm looking at our notes here, I think we're now going to talk about armor.
Okay.
It's probably been a while since we talked about this part about armor. But we might have talked about it before. I want to start with just talking about like armor visual categories in Destiny. So at the top, we've got what we call aspirational armor. This is stuff like raids, trials, dungeons. We want the armor that comes from these activities to be flashy, or to like really talk about the core of what that experience is.
Makes sense.
It's really important that when players earn these armors, they feel proud, they want to wear them, they want to show them off in the tower. Next, we've got silver, right? This is armor that you can buy for the store for silver. It's important for us that this feels like it's sort of breaking the mold of what you could expect in a Destiny game. It's our place to experiment with stuff that's a little bit fourth wall breaky. And importantly, we want anyone that spends silver on armor to feel like, hey, it was worth it, right? Like I got my money's worth when I spent this armor, it was cool. Then we have what I call narrative armor. This is the stuff that you'll see in any sort of our marketing trailers. This is the stuff that you earn in the season pass. It's the stuff that you earn in the post game of a campaign. And it's really about driving home what that specific moment in time was. So in season 21, it's deep sea diver armor, right? In Witch Queen, it's a sort of like weird paranormal detective armor. You'll see what it is in the final shape here in a week or so. But that armor for us is really about like driving home this clear, consistent fantasy of like, oh yeah, I was there. I remember that time in Destiny. Finally, we've got rituals and blues. And this space has always sort of been about that core Guardian fantasy. What does the Guardian look like that you would imagine as sort of the stereotypical everyday Guardian, or the Guardian that you see on the front line? Maybe tragically a Guardian that tried to go into the portal of the Traveler and then gets cut up into a million pieces.
Oh, okay.
This is that spot.
So that kind of makes me wonder if, a lot of people, when they saw that Guardian got chopped up in like the final shape trailer and stuff, I think he was wearing like one of the original armor sets from D1. So I don't know, but a lot of people really like that armor. Maybe they're planning on bringing that, old set back for each of the classes, So, hey, maybe that's the thing.
And we need a lot of armor here to sort of flesh out those fantasies. Now, sometime in the middle of last year, we sort of reevaluated our priorities on armor. And we said, hey, we need to be spending more on the armors that people care the most about, the people that earn, that spend, that do all this to this so they can sort of get these armors in the game. So this is like our PvP stuff in trials, our aspirational stuff in raids and dungeons, our narrative stuff. We thought we weren't consistently hitting the bar enough in those looks. And I think that since that initiative, we've been really successful in this. We've put out great stuff in terms of like cowboy armor for Spire. We've put out awesome stuff.
I would agree with that for the most part. Like a lot of the seasonal armor and like the dungeon armor stuff has been fantastic. So, hey, that is great. So props to them on that. The armor team has outdone themselves with a lot of that aspirational / narrative armor. They've done a really good job with it.
Up in the Root of Nightmares raid, and we've put out a bunch of awesome armor sets for sort of a deep sea fantasy last season and Season of the Deep. Now, what we failed to do when we reprioritized, hey, where are our resources going, is communicate this to you. So we knew that when we made this change, we weren't going to be able to make a ritual armor set every single year. And we thought, okay, well, that's fine. We have a lot that fits this sort of base Guardian fantasy. But we should have communicated that out to you. And
right.
So, one, I'd like to say, this is not a thing that we're never going to invest in. We're investing in it again in the final shape. There's going to be a whole nother ritual suite of armor. And we're excited to sort of replenish that base Guardian fantasy. But
okay, so that's, I do understand that, but here's my big issue with armor inside of like our core playlist, whether that's Crucible, Vanguard, I want to say maybe some world drop stuff. You get the idea. My main issue with that, I don't care how it looks. I just get sick of it dropping with terrible stats. If they could at least make it so that armor from the ritual playlists and whatnot actually have a chance to drop with good stats, then I honestly think that would fix a lot of the complaints because, most of us know how to use the transmog system at that point. I'm not worried about how the armor looks in those modes. I just want to see, at least occasionally get a piece of armor with good stats. Because 99% of the time, if I get a piece of armor from Crucible, from Strikes, Gambit, whatever, it gets dismantled pretty much immediately because the stats are terrible. I just want them to fix the stats. So, maybe that's just me. I don't care about how the armor from those playlists looks. I just want them to have good stats.
Just because we're doing that in the final shape year, that doesn't mean that we communicated this soon enough. So also for this year, we want to take an armor set that we were going to put in the Eververse and we're saying, no, we're We should have communicated this earlier. It's really important that our fans can trust us. Let's take this armor set that we were going to use in season 22 for the Eververse set, and let's say, no, it's going to be free, and we're going to put it as ritual rewards. So now,
Okay, I appreciate that because we've seen a lot of complaints about Eververse, and there are still things that need to be addressed there. I'm not anti-Eververse by any means. I don't really use the Eververse store all that often unless, maybe there's a piece that I just really want, or, I don't know, maybe there's something for Bright Dust for sale that I really want. Outside of that, I don't really buy stuff from the Eververse store very often at all. So, that's great. And I do appreciate that though, because if nothing else, that's a good kind of, good faith move from Bungie. It's a sign of good faith. So I do appreciate that. Hopefully the armor's dope. If it is, then yeah, I'll do the ritual stuff to try to get it.
next season, before the end of the season, you should see a brand new armor set that you can earn through playing Strikes, Crucible, Gambit as like a ritual reward
Awesome.
for doing this, a brand new armor look. Again, we're confident in our strategy going forward. We believe this is the right priority going forward, but also it's our responsibility to communicate this stuff sooner. So we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing by all the fans. All right, I think that's armor. Let's talk about comms. Okay, we've talked a lot about how the development team is very busy, and I think that although we really want to be focused on delivering great content to y'all and making sure that's our top priority, that doesn't mean our communications have to suffer. And so the first thing, we want to be talking to y'all more. But talking to y'all more, our number one priority, we have to keep our community members and our community leaders safe from the Bungie side. I don't want anyone that signs up to come work at Bungie and to talk to y'all about the game to have to worry about their personal safety.
And that's entirely fair. I don't really care what anyone's stance on communication is. That's an entirely fair stance. And the reality is that, something that people have to keep in mind when they say, oh, they should just ignore it and go about business as usual, blah, blah, blah. If employees don't feel safe where they work, they quit. So, yeah, I understand that completely. I would like to see more communication like Joe is doing right here. I appreciate that he did this. I want to see more stuff like this, but I do understand where he's coming from that completely. I mean, what happened to DMG is a perfect example of this. DMG was a huge loss to the community. He was so engaged with everyone. He was out here, even doing videos with like content creators and stuff. And he was so open and transparent and was actively interacting with people in the community that losing DMG was a huge loss. And I honestly, I think the guy that was fucking with DMG got off way too easy. I think for what he was pulling, he should have seen jail time, possibly prison time. But I do understand where he's coming from on this, but let's see what he has to say about presumably future communications.
So we're going to keep using our branded accounts. You'll see these on Twitter and you'll see these on Reddit, right? And we want to be using those accounts with more personality, going and talking to y'all more. The other thing is me. I play the game a bunch. And right now, I don't have a bunch of time to be writing sort of big, long blog posts like you would assume. But when season 22 rolls around again, I'm going to be in the game a lot. I'm going to be playing a lot. So what we want to do is commit to a few times next season and the season after. I'm just going to stream me playing the game. And you'll be able to come and talk to me. And it's not going to be reveal packed, but it is a great time to just be like, hey, check in with Joe. These are the things that we're feeling. Get his opinions on them. And hopefully, if I can get and play with some of our like elite players,
Okay, I'm going to stop this right here. Guys, if you go into one of his streams, do not be an asshole. Okay, seriously, this is the best opportunity you will ever get to provide feedback directly to someone at Bungie. Do not be a dick. Okay? Go into his streams, talk to him, give feedback, give criticisms. Don't be an asshole. Okay? Like doing what he's talking about doing right here, streaming, especially with, community sentiment, that takes balls. All right, so I have to applaud him for that because, man, that's got to be kind of a frightening prospect. So go into his streams. I will certainly be there, but don't be a dick. Don't be an asshole. Provide feedback, provide criticism, be respectful.
Learn a bit more about the game. I learned a ton from playing with y'all in the community about
And when he mentions elite players, I hope he will do that both from the PvE and the PvP side. I would love to see him play with someone, like Cammy Cakes, Frostbolt, from the PvP side of things, and talk with them about stuff going in inside of PvP. And in PvE, guys like Saltagrippo, so on and so forth. And, that really is, that would be a great way for him to, really see some of the pain points inside of those modes. So I hope that works out really well. I hope some of the, larger streamers out there and, higher level players will reach out to him and offer to play with him, because I think that would be a fantastic opportunity to actually discuss the state of the game as a whole with him.
Different builds that are exciting, different ways to roll. So I want to commit, get out there, play some PvP, learn from some experts, and play alongside all of you next season. All right, the only thing that I have left here is close. So I think that means my rambling on here today is over. Thanks so much for listening to this, for watching this. Really excited to see a bunch of y'all next week at the reveal. Bye.
Okay, so a few things really quick. I loved this. And honestly, props to Joe for doing this. Props to, everyone at Bungie for, I would assume, allowing him to do this. Given the state of the game right now, this took some guts, and I appreciate him just sitting down and being open with us and, having that transparency and having what did actually feel like a conversation. I appreciate that. We've had some fantastic TWABs and state of the games in the past, but I honestly, this is the format that I want to see. Just seeing, someone from Bungie just sitting down and talking to us, whether it's Joe or someone else. This is the format that I think is better and that I think, is just preferable. I don't care if they had fucking Shakespeare writing their TWABs and their blog posts. I would still take what Joe did right here over a lengthy TWAB or anything like that any day of the week. He was straight and to the point, and I appreciate that. Now, of course, this didn't talk about, every single issue inside of the game, no mention of Antaeus wards and whatever, but it's guys, it's a 16-minute video, right? He's not going to be able to cover everything. If he were to sit down and talk about every issue inside of Destiny right now, this video would be longer than Oppenheimer, okay? But I appreciate the fact that he did this. This took some balls. I appreciate him being open with us and honest with us. I appreciate, him saying, yeah, that state of the game wasn't good, because it wasn't. It wasn't what we needed right now. This video that he did right here, this is more what we needed right now. This 16-minute video gave me more hope for the future of the game than, that 6,500 word or something article that was the state of the game. This video gave me more hope for Destiny 2 than anything has in probably a year. So, props to Joe. Thank you for doing this. It's much appreciated. Hopefully he'll be able to do more of this in the future. And I would encourage people, when he does start streaming and everything like that, go in there and just talk to the guy. Give him your feedback, give him your criticisms, and maybe he'll address some of them. At the very least, if he's hearing what we have to say about the game, he can relay that to everyone else at Bungie. So this was really good. This was a good video. I think this is a good format. I would like to see more of this in the future. But anyway, guys, I'm going to cut it here because this video is already nearly an hour long and I have to cut it down as much as I can. But this was great. Big thanks to Joe for doing this. This really, it just made me feel better about the game as a whole. Destiny 2 is my favorite game of all time. And it's not even close. It is my favorite game of all time by a wide margin. And so when the game is struggling, man, is it frustrating, because, what I tell people all the time if they ask me, why do you still play Destiny or whatever, it's because when Destiny is in a good place, there is no other game like it. There is no other game that can even touch the sort of experience that Destiny can provide when it's in a good place. And the reason I think so many of us get frustrated and angry when the game is in a bad spot is because we know what the game looks like when it's in a good spot. We know how incredible Destiny 2 can be. We know how much potential it has, and we know what it feels like to be excited to play this game every single time we boot up our computers or consoles or whatever. So, thank you to Joe for doing this. This was awesome. I want to see more of this in the future. This sort of open communication is exactly what we needed. But for now, Guardians, I will see you all in the next video. Also, I do have a Twitch and a Twitter. You can check the links for those in the description of the video. And the new season starts next week, so come by my Twitch. I will be streaming for probably a good chunk of the day, as well as pretty much every evening for the entire week of that first season. So come hang out. Also, of course, do not forget to leave me a comment and a like, and hit that subscribe button with the bell icon. It really helps me out a lot, helps the channel out a lot, and it means a lot when you guys do that. Let me know what you guys thought of this video. I really liked it. This gave me hope for Destiny, more so than I've had in a long time. But for now, I will see you all in the next video. Peace, Guardians.